Okay, hello. So I literally just got home because I have like exams this week and shit. Whatever. Basically, I just got home, but I had this crazy idea because I'm alone basically all the time for some reason. So I have a lot of time to think, and I thought of this right now. Like, why? No, wait. Okay, so hold on. I think this is why you should read problematic books and listen to, okay, maybe not listen, but just consume also problematic media. Okay, now let me explain because I know I'm gonna get canceled for this. But let me explain my idea. So you have books that are dealing with problematic or have problematic content in them. I'm going to use Call Me by Your Name as an example because people have told me to not read this book. Why? Because it depicts pedophilia or some shit. I don't know, I haven't read it yet, but I will. Please don't spoil me in the comments. I will block you. No, like, but people have told me to not watch it. And I was always like, yeah, but read it, watch it, whatever, both things, right? Like both, whatever, like read and watch, right? And I was really like, why? Like, I want to read it, it seems nice, the scenery is always like really cool and stuff. And, people were always like, yeah, but it's really bad because this one guy is like so much older than him, than the other one. And, I was always like, hmm. Okay, well, that's obviously bad. Like, that's, or ass, or I don't know, like if he manipulates it. I don't know what the plot is. I have not read it, so I don't know. But let's talk about in general, if there is just depiction of weird things, let's call it that. I don't know. You know, I don't think that we should not read these things. Like, let's be so honest. People have told me to not read it, and I actually listen to them, which I hate myself for. I'm going to read it this summer, I promise. Why? Because I think that consuming media that is also that depicts problematic things helps you and helps you realize, oh, that's bad, or why, or I'm saying I think we should get into contact with things that we don't agree with because that's how we grow. Because also like talk to people who have different opinions than you. Otherwise, you're never going to develop this way, or like you're never going to maybe understand. Like I always like to try to understand people. That's why I like psychology because I want to understand. That's why I like history and psychology because I like to understand why people do certain things and then why people do certain things, as I said, right? So, and I think the way you learn that is through talking because how else are you going to learn? Like, basically, all we do on Earth is just talk, whether it's written down, whether we're listening to it, like we always communicate things that we want to express because what the hell is life even about? Like, you know what I mean? If we don't communicate anything, then there's no reason because we don't communicate anything. We don't talk, like, you know, any way of communication is, I think, the important thing here, right? So I think that's something that we need to consider. Now, what I again want to say, I've been talking way too fast for way too short and way too many topics. I know it's like 3 minutes long, this video, but I already said like 50 things. Well, okay, let's get back to the main topic. So why you should read problematic things. Now, we need to make a distinction because I'm not telling you to enjoy it. I'm not telling you, oh yeah, go support that guy because he's a pedophile. That's not what I'm saying, like at all. No. I'm saying read problematic things so you understand why they're problematic. You know, if somebody just tells you, and this is exactly the thing that's going on in our world, if people just tell you something and you just believe it straight away without evaluating it, without checking it yourself, like, what's the point? Like, okay, sure, some things, that you don't really care about, or, things that are just maybe a bit superficial, for example, like, for example, I don't know, let me make it like an example, okay? So somebody says, grass in no, okay, that doesn't make sense. Grass in like like the planet on a different planet. I don't know. No, okay, let's say for example in Ethiopia there is blue flowers. Okay, I don't know what the fuck. Like I'm just saying, and somebody tells you that, and you're like, oh, okay, like all right, okay, like okay, if you care enough to check, then you're gonna fact check it, right? But if you don't care, like you're either gonna believe that person or you're not going to believe that person. But if the person is like trying to tell you and trying to give you evidence for it, like, oh yeah, look, I read this and this person said that and there's this evidence, then okay, you might think, okay, that's already more evidence, so I might believe it more. Like this is a small scale example, but let's say, for example, because this is what's happening today, this is what's happening all over history. People are telling other people to believe something which is just not true, and people believe it, and then that's just not good. Like, I don't want to specifically what the hell I'm talking about. I mean, many people can probably guess, but I don't want to get canceled on here. I maybe I do want to travel to the US like one day, but actually no, I don't anymore. But if I say that person's name, I'm probably going to get like demonetized or like I don't know what I'm going demonetized, bro. What the fuck does that even mean? I don't know. Whatever, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to get persecuted or something for saying something because that's also happening today, which is really concerning, but yeah. Like I feel like the clock is ticking backwards, but anyway, that's a topic for a different video. But coming back to the topic, so I wanted to say, if you just believe everything, that's just not good. Like that's just not good. So if somebody tells you that, oh, this is problematic because of this, how are you going to know instead, like if you don't check it yourself? And I'm not saying that, okay, it might not be problematic then if you check it. If it is problematic, if you also check it, then it just is. But that's just the thing of learning. Like then you learn that, okay, it's problematic and that's why. But if somebody just tells you, at the same time, I think there's some exceptions to this, obviously. Obviously, there's always exceptions, but let's say, for example, you know, okay, you are a person who does not want to read certain contents, like, let's say, I don't know, contents containing rape, okay, for example, right? That's just a warning then, okay? And you don't have to do it. Nobody's forcing you to read something. But if you are interested in it, but people tell you not to because it's problematic, I think that's where the issue is. Because if you still want to learn about it, if you still want to read that book without necessarily enjoying that content of it, then that's fine, I think. And then we have this whole thing with this is a big thing. I mean, artists who are problematic and stuff. Obviously, we have evidence of things that people have said, obviously. But at the same time, nowadays it's just so easy to fake it. So I'm always very careful with people calling other people problematic and telling me not to do this or that, because I would love to just know 100%, but we can never know anything for 100%, I think. So that's just difficult. But I think we should always let people or give people chances to at least explain or say their reasoning. And if that's bullshit, then that's bullshit. Like that's just ask them. And there's definitely people who abuse that explanation time, or however I should call it. Yeah, but that's just ask. But then like that person is just not good because, yeah, for example, there are instances where people change. People change, and if somebody digs up something from their old Twitter from 2011 or something, where they said something, but now they're like, I don't know, 20 years older, or I don't know how to do math, but they're like so much older. And I think if they don't continue to do something like this and they actually like know what they did, and I think people change and I think that's normal and people learn, and that's exactly why I think we should still consume things that are seen to be inappropriate or stuff, because that's how you learn. If a child never experiences, or if a child never sees blood in their life because their parents cover their eyes when there's blood or something, for example, and then they get into the real world and then something happens to them or they're alone and they're gonna see blood, they're gonna freak out because they've never seen that before, you know. Wait, I forgot where I was going with this, but right, so exactly, that's like censorship. If you just censor complete everything, I mean, there are so many examples of books. Okay, let's say, for example, okay, Lolita is a book. I haven't read it. I want to read it again for the same reasons. I am not interested in any of the bad stuff. Like, I'm not, no, I just want to know why people talk about it. And I think that's how you start conversation. I think that's how you learn, as I said. You know, I mean, it's the same thing, for example, with, it's a similar thing, okay? That's a bit different, I think. But for example, Mein Kampf, like from Hitler, like, whoever reads that for entertainment, or actually because they, like, that's fucked up. But if somebody actually reads it to understand history and understand him better, that's how you learn, bro. Like, that's how you learn. How about, how, that's an autobiography. He wrote that himself. That's his words that are on paper. So we can learn a lot from that. We can learn a lot from what he said. Although people still write things that they don't think, so we can still not be 100% sure, with anything. But that's exactly the thing. With ancient history too, I mean, people wrote down things, but people might have misinterpreted it. People might have just written it down differently because they wanted it to be written down differently. I mean, I don't want to like make people mad, but I mean the Bible too. And I know I'm gonna get canceled for this by like Christians, but I don't care. I'm sorry, I'm Christian myself, so shut up. The Bible was literally translated into I don't know how many languages, and it was written by monks who were tired from working 12 hours a day, probably because they were forced to, I'm guessing. I don't know. At least that's how I can imagine it. You know, people might have written down things differently because they wanted it to be written down differently. So how are we supposed to know what actually the content of the first ever copy of the Bible was? We don't know. We can't know. And if somebody argue we know, then show me, like maybe I should research more on this, but I'm just saying, like, it's always written down by other people, and other people always have also feelings, so either way, so this is my conclusion. I think we should still read books that are problematic to learn, okay? To learn because that's how we learn. And that's what also it's good because it makes us emotional, it evokes feelings, and that's how we also start to argue or how we form our argumentations, which is also really important because if somebody just tells you some bullshit and you believe that, that's maybe not the best way to argue, you know? Maybe we should think about that more often. I think I'm actually really smart. Like, I think I should, I don't know, I'd love to be a philosophy teacher or something. But actually, no, I don't want to be a teacher. I just want to talk about this on YouTube. So that's why I'm doing this. Because I like talking and I'm alone. So, yeah.